Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Melvin Way, and these are queen palms. So they're planted all over Southern California. They look very nice, and when the wind blows, the fronds kind of sway around in the wind. It's very good looking. And as you can see here, I have three fruits that are pretty green, unripe, I guess. And they have little imperfections, cracks, folds in them. But these were the biggest fruits that I could find among all the fruits that I saw. All the rest were sort of yellowish or brown and much smaller. I assumed that they had started decaying, but these just look way bigger than the other ones, so I decided to go with these three. I don't know if that's the right call or not yet, but I think in general the bigger the seeds, and hence the bigger the fruit, the better your chances are for germination. They just have that much more resources for the new seedlings. So my first order of business was to soak these in 0.5% hydrogen peroxide solution. And what that does is it disinfects everything, kills all the microbes. Mold especially is the problem indoors. And this will help soak in and soften up the fruit itself. And later on I'll be able to rip off the flesh. I didn't know this at first. I thought maybe I could just get by like this for a while, and then after a few days plant them in the soil, but as time went on, I did more and more research. I knew nothing about this species or how to germinate these seeds when I first picked up the seeds outside. Based on everything I've gathered online, it seems like you should soak your queen palm fruits anywhere from 1 to 7 days. To soften up the fruit flesh, then you should remove it. So I didn't know this at first, and I had just planned on letting them soak like this for a while in a sterile environment, but actually the seeds have an oily coating, and this often prevents oxygen and water from actually coming into contact with the seed, inhibiting germination. Also, the fruit flesh itself releases some compounds, I think, that inhibit the germination as well. So there's signaling going on. If you remove all the fruit flesh, the problem will be gone. So this is my lighting setup. I have this raised on a tissue box on this little cheapo ottoman. It's really close to a clamp lamp with an aluminum reflector, an LED bulb that gives off 830 lumens in light. You can use a more powerful bulb if you like. So this is a lux meter, and at an equivalent position I'm getting 365 times 100. That's 36,500 lux. So that's pretty powerful, not quite like full noon sun, which is up to 120,000 I think in most places, but it's still pretty good. It's equivalent to direct sun, but kind of maybe oblique direct sun, early morning or late afternoon, that kind of intensity. Out of all the palm species growing in Southern California, only the desert fan palm is a native species that grows next to desert springs, and I've seen some of those before, but these are all imported ornamental palms. So the queen palm is a staple of Southern California landscaping. It can grow up to 50 meters in height, and it doesn't take up too much space horizontally, which is good. It can grow quite tall vertically, so that's pretty much ideal for apartment landscaping or any yards in which there's not a lot of space, especially in California where the houses are bunched up close together in the suburbs with very small backyards as opposed to elsewhere in the United States. So this is the ideal palm tree that can provide some of that ambiance, the theme that Californians are looking for, while at the same time not taking up too much space. My intention here is just to see if I can get germination to happen with these three seeds. They're the biggest that I found, and observe their early stages of tree growth as saplings. I'm not really interested in going for full-grown trees. That's way beyond the scope of YouTube video series. It just takes way too long, and I don't have any space because I live in an apartment complex. Plus, I got these from queen palm trees that are right outside, so I have plenty of queen palms to look at. I don't actually need to, raise these for 10, 20 years to see what happens. Alright, it's day 3. As you can see, the outer layers, the green is fading, and they look sort of yellowish underneath, and they're just covered in bubbles of oxygen. So it's a very sterile environment due to the hydrogen peroxide. I don't have to worry about mold. And when I lifted up the plastic wrap on top of this, I kind of got a whiff of a fermented smell. So I don't know if that's common, but they say you should change the water every day. I think that might be excessive, but I'll change the water today or tomorrow, and just to keep things fresh. It's day 4, and since I still haven't changed the solution, all I did was add in a little bit more store-bought concentrated 3% hydrogen peroxide. It's fizzing more than ever now, and the color is still this golden brown. It's sort of like ginger ale, the soft drink, except instead of carbonation you just have oxygen bubbles being given off, and the other byproduct is water, which you can't really tell from anything. I mean, the volume's not going to change. So it's about time that I changed the water with some fresh new 0.5% hydrogen peroxide right after this filming. Alright, it's day 7, and I'm going to have a look. So I've had this thing soaking in hydrogen peroxide, 0.5%, for quite a while. Got a trash can nearby, and what they usually recommend is you kind of dig in and remove the flesh of the fruit. These things kind of have a fermented smell. Not so much as at the 3 or 4 day mark when I first changed the water. But let's see if I can dig anything in there and get anything out. After 7 days of soaking in 0.5% hydrogen peroxide solution, there's not that much fruit flesh to remove. It's a very, very thin layer, which was surprising. So these seeds are much bigger than I anticipated, and the flesh was a much thinner layer than I anticipated. When you get to the seed, it's just these white fibers that feel very slimy, no doubt because they're coated in oils that prevent the seeds from germinating unless all the flesh rots away and there's adequate water to just let the oil float away and dissipate over time. So I'm going to add in a little bit more 3% hydrogen peroxide solution to accelerate the removal of the decomposing fruit flesh and to keep everything sterile. So this is going pretty well. I'm on the timetable more or less. Seeds don't drown immediately just because they've been soaking in water for a while, especially not because these seeds haven't been exposed to water all this time. Really, they've just been trapped underneath a layer of oil and fiber. So the other thing I've been neglecting is the temperature underneath the LED bulb has more or less been 26 Celsius, I imagine. If you average it throughout the day, it's very steady where I live, the temperature during this time of year, especially indoors. So I'm going to raise the temperature by putting it on top of my DVR. So here's your typical crappy DVR box from a cable provider. These things break every so often, and then you have to go get a new one, and they're never going to give you a high-end one, but for this purpose they're very useful. It's usually 32 to 33 Celsius here, so I'm just going to place this dish right on top of the hard drive where it's warm. It's day 8, and in fresh hydrogen peroxide solution, you can't see any color change, and there's no reactivity with hydrogen peroxide anymore. Basically, they've been stripped of all decomposing matter. These are just clean fibers and seed. It took me a few days to get around to doing this, but this is my new setup. As you can see, the sun is shining in, so it's really hot. This spot on the DVR is 6 degrees Celsius hotter than it normally is, which means this spot might be in the mid to high 30s of Celsius. So I took some wild California hill dirt. This is rich in iron. It's got a reddish hue, and I baked it in the oven, cooled it down, and then put in this tiny pot and watered with hydrogen peroxide to oxygenate everything and keep it sterile. The seeds are in there. You can see the top of one of the seeds sticking out, 2 actually, and then kind of a third one to the bottom right. But they say you can't plant these very deep. They're not very tolerant to being planted deep, so you gotta keep them just beneath the surface of the soil with a little bit exposed, and I have plastic wrap to prevent moisture from evaporating.